if you are a parent struggling with behavioral problems, if you are a parent who is dealing with developmental delays, if you are a parent who just had a newborn and you don't know what to do, you don't know how to properly raise them so that you don't end up dealing with power struggles and tantrums and all of the chaos that a lot of parents nowadays have to deal with. Or if you're an expecting parent and you just want to prepare for parenthood and you want to know what is the ideal approach to raising children. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you my approach to parenting. This is an approach that allows you to prevent behavioral problems before they ever occur, unlock your child's full potential, build true resilience so that your child is not constantly having big emotions to deal with. And this also makes your life 1,000 times easier. So the first concept that I want you guys to understand is something called the behavioral spectrum. I want you guys to imagine that your child's behavior exists along a spectrum. And at one end, you have chaos. You have all of the behavioral problems that you are probably familiar with. These are the power struggles, the tantrums, the meltdowns, the rebellion, the defiance, the revenge seeking. These are all the things that you do not want to deal with. On the other end of the spectrum, you can call this heaven. This is where your child's full potential lies. And this is also where your child is calm and cooperative and well-behaved, and they're not constantly fighting back against you. They're happy, they're thriving, they're healthy. And this is the goal. You want your child to spend the majority of their time on this side of the spectrum. Now, the thing that determines whether your child is going to fall somewhere over here or if they're going to spend more of their time over here is how well their needs are met. And I want to give you guys a little bit of insight. I don't want to get too stuck in this. I'm going to make videos on this in the future, but essentially your child has 4 core needs. These are the things that dictate the majority of your child's behavior. And as I mentioned, this also dictates how much of your child's full potential will be unlocked if they are thriving and engaged and curious and focused, or if they're just stuck fighting back against the world, if they're in survival mode, scrambling to get their needs met. So 4 core needs, and you could imagine that these are arranged on a hierarchy. So at the bottom, you have security. Above that, you have connection. Above that, you have autonomy. You can think of this as independence, power, control. And at the top, you have opportunity. I'll just put an O, opportunity. And these are your child's 4 core needs. And you can imagine that these needs are like tanks that need to be filled. And when you keep the tanks full, when you satisfy and meet your child's needs, well, your child's going to be spending their time over here in heaven. They're going to be calm and happy and cooperative and engaged with the world. They're going to be focused on learning, on growth and development. If any of these tanks drain, if any of these tanks drop below the danger zone, that is when all hell breaks loose. That is when your child slams into survival mode. Their brain slams into survival mode. They start erupting in this frantic, chaotic behavior. And this is where you find children engaging in power struggles, fighting back. Maybe they're fighting for autonomy, or they're acting out. They're being disruptive. Maybe they're seeking connection, but they don't know exactly how to get it. So essentially, every one of these needs, when they go unmet, you will find that there's a specific problem that will sort of manifest out of that unmet need. And you could identify and diagnose what is deficient by just simply looking at the problem. Now, the next thing I want to touch on, I want you guys to understand that you don't want to focus on your child's emotions. When your child has a behavioral problem, when they throw a tantrum, when they fight back against you, they don't cooperate, you don't want to focus on the behavior. You don't want to focus on the emotion. You want to focus on the unmet need. You want to ask yourself, okay, the behavior is occurring, and what is the need associated with it? What is deficient? And now I mentioned there's 4 core needs. Within these levels, because they are levels, there are sub-levels. And so the number one most important job of every parent is to truly understand their child's needs. It's to learn these needs as best as you can, because not only will these allow you to address and diagnose and identify and solve problems as they occur, but understanding these needs is how you prevent problems from happening. When you develop a strategy around keeping the tanks full, maintaining your child's calm and cooperative and happy tendencies, this makes everything easier. And these tanks, which again, I'll make videos about this in the future, you could think of them not just as tanks that need to be full, but tanks that sort of expand and contract based on how full they are the majority of the time. And what I mean by that is, if you're constantly filling the tanks and keeping them full, well, you sort of have a buffer. You sort of have a margin for error. You can make mistakes, and your child will not move into chaos. They become resilient. And this is what I mentioned before. When you're constantly meeting your child's needs, when you are constantly filling up their tanks, this is how you build resilience. Because if your child is constantly feeling safe, they're feeling connected, they're feeling in control, well, if you take a little bit of control away, it's not going to really register as a major threat to your child, because they're not in the danger zone. They have been feeling like they have enough control. The beliefs that form as a result of them having their needs met buffers against changes. So you can get away with a lot. You can make a ton of mistakes, and you can also have sort of get out of jail free cards, where if you absolutely need to take away power and control, and you need to just veto whatever it is in the moment, if there's an issue, you need to just do what you need to do. You can do it without consequences. You could do it without having to deal with all of the chaos that comes from a lot of parents having to force their children to do things that they don't want. If you're constantly focused on meeting these needs, you get so much margin for error, and it also makes your life a lot easier, because sometimes you have to just make a decision, and it is what it is. You don't have time to debate it. You don't have time to fight with your child. And when you get this right, your child will still stay in this heaven zone, even if you're not being perfect about meeting their needs at every second, because you're doing it enough of the time. So this is how you build resilience. This is truly how you nurture a child who is not going to develop coping mechanisms, because if you don't meet your child's needs properly and your child is constantly acting out, throwing tantrums, they're not focused, they're not engaged, they're having difficulty focusing and learning and listening to you, they don't trust you, they don't respect you, well, your child is going to constantly be on edge in some way, shape, or form. You're constantly going to be dealing with a child who is anxious, who could develop self-esteem issues, who could develop beliefs about themselves that they're not competent. You're going to end up with a child who begins to cope with these unmet needs in some way, and they're going to develop these unhealthy mechanisms to deal with the fact that their needs are not met. If, on the other hand, you're constantly meeting their needs, well, not only are they going to be happy and calm and resilient, but it's going to take a lot to trigger them. And this is what you want. You have all these experts that are teaching emotional regulation, that you should teach your child how to regulate their emotions. That when your child's unhappy, you have to teach them how to deal with disappointment. But when you build a foundation that is so strong and resilient, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to teach them any of that. It is built in. They don't feel the big emotions to begin with. And this is ultimately the goal. This is going to help your child develop conscientiousness, willpower, the ability to push through difficult situations, because the stress, their capacity for stress, is going to be a lot higher. Now, one of the things I want to touch on, and this is perhaps one of the most important things, is that not only is this going to allow your child to thrive, not only is this going to allow your child to focus and engage and unlock their full potential, and not only is it going to prevent problems, and not only is it going to build resilience, but this is going to allow you to spend spend less time and energy focused on your child, so that you can actually spend quality time with them and have more time for yourself to actually care for your family. And what I mean by this is, a lot of parents become exhausted. They have these needy children who are insecure, who are constantly needing attention. And children do not want to be needy. They want to be independent, and they want to engage with the world. It's not optimal for a child to be trapped over here, constantly needing to validate the connection, which is what neediness is. So not only are you not going to have children like that, but you're going to have your time freed up, because your child's going to be happy and engaged. You're going to have your time freed up to actually do things for your family, to keep the family running smooth. Because if you're always dealing with chaos, if you're always dealing with problems, well, when you become a parent, and you know this if you're already a parent, you not only have less time than ever before. Even if you get all this perfectly, you still have to put time and energy into raising children. So not only do you have less time than ever before, but if you're constantly dealing with chaos and your stress levels are just constantly going up and up, you're going to create a cycle where you are destroying your child's sense of security, because when you're stressed, they feel that. And then their sense of security, because they're dependent on you. And if you're signaling that the world is not safe, or that there is something wrong through your emotions, your stress, they feel that. And now the fundamental need, their foundation, security is if your child is hungry, if your child hasn't slept, if your child feels like the world is unsafe, it doesn't matter how much of this other stuff you get right. Their foundation is going to be weak, and they're going to be stuck, trapped in chaos. So if you're constantly spending all of your time trying to put out fires, you're going to be stressed out. You're going to be miserable, and you're not going to be able to meet your child's needs successfully. And you're also going to cause damage through your own stress. And so this entire system, this entire philosophy allows you to not only optimize your child's behavior, it allows you to meet your own needs successfully and optimize your life as a parent, which is equally as important, because if your life as a parent is not optimized, there's no way you're going to be able to raise an optimal child, and your child's going to get trapped over here in some shape or form. And anytime your child is over here, they're developing coping mechanisms. Now, I will make more videos on this in the future, but the reason why children act out and have these emotional outbursts so easily when their needs are not met is because they have not had the time to develop coping mechanisms just yet. This is why babies, you see babies, if their needs are not met, they'll cry. Toddlers will stomp their feet, throw tantrums, and scream and yell. This is the expression, the pure expression of emotion. When you start forcing emotional regulation, you're teaching your child to suppress those emotions. And when you suppress emotions, you have to develop coping mechanisms. And so this is so important that you get right, not just for you, not just for your child, but for your family and also for future generations. Now, there's a couple of other things I want to touch on, I want to give you guys a couple of examples so that you kind of understand this a little bit better. And one of the most common complaints of parents is they have trouble putting their children to sleep. They have bedtime battles, and this is stressful for everybody. And I want you to understand that bedtime battles, all right, I just mentioned that sleep is one of the needs at the level of security. Your child needs physiological security. And sleep is a physiological need. And at night, your child begins to get sleepier. Now, if your child's needs were perfectly met, if there were no unmet needs at any of these levels, well, when the onset of sleepiness at night, as it gets later, when the onset of sleepiness begins to rise, your child's not going to have any competing needs that are going to fight against it. It's not that your child's nervous system is not regulated. You'll see experts say, if your child is fighting you at sleep, their nervous system is not regulated and you need to regulate it. But that's a very crude way of explaining this. Really what it is there's an unmet need somewhere and you need to identify it and meet it. So maybe your child feels like they didn't get enough control and power that day. And so they're going to fight you purely on the basis of trying to establish that they are independent in some way. Or maybe your child did not get enough connection and they're going to fight sleep in order to try to connect with you more, spend more time with you, and validate that you love them, that you care about them, that the connection is real. And so this is the reason for all, you can call it bad behavior or disruptive behavior when it comes to following routines. Because if you want your child to go to sleep at 8 p.m. every night, but they're fighting sleep till 10 p.m. because there's unmet needs and they're either going to fight against sleep until those needs get met, or sleep will become the dominant unmet need and it will overtake all of the other unmet needs. So you can kind of conceptualize your child's needs as competing, and the dominant one tends to win out. And the lower the level, the more impactful it will be, which means if you're getting these two right, well, then the deficiency of autonomy is not going to be as large. It's still going to be problematic, but it's not going to be nearly as large as if your child was sleep deprived or hungry. And this is true in adults as well. Children just have slightly different needs given that they're dependent, highly dependent on their caregiver for the majority of their childhood. If they didn't have a caregiver, especially newborns and toddlers, they would die. And so this is the philosophy. In the future, I'm going to make videos that detail how all of this works. We're going to dive into all of the different levels. I will make videos on the levels themselves. I will make videos showing you how to identify and diagnose problems and how to associate them with the unmet needs. I will make videos showing you some strategies on how to properly keep these needs met and fill up the tanks, because there's this idea of 80-20, right? It's the 80-20 rule, that 80% of your 20% of your actions are responsible for 80% of the results. Well, it's the same in parenting. You don't want to memorize 100 different strategies to keep these needs met. In fact, I've identified 8 strategies, 8 actions that are the highest leverage. When you get these 8 actions right, you don't need to focus on memorizing 100 different things. You get the 8 actions right, and it takes care of the majority of this, and it will push your child onto this side of the spectrum indefinitely, because these are the highest leverage actions. Now, if you want my help, if you want me to coach you, if you want me to show you how this works, and you're just interested in getting this done fast, you don't want to wait till I put out tons of videos. You want to understand this stuff immediately so that you can actually be the best parent possible to your child. Keep them in a state where they're calm and cooperative and happy, and build resilience so your child is not getting triggered by every little thing. You're setting up their emotional foundation, the systems behind their emotions, so that for the rest of their life, they are secure and they're not seeking to cope with their unmet needs in unhealthy ways, which is what the majority of humans are doing. A lot of us, almost every one of us, are traumatized in some way. When we were growing up, our needs were not met in some way, and we've almost all developed coping mechanisms that influence us to act inauthentically and influence us to do things that are not authentic to ourselves, but are just ways to cope with the fact that we had unmet needs when we were growing up. So if you want to prevent that, if you want to raise the healthiest possible child, this is how you do it. You do not do it by connection before correction or any of the discipline, gentle parenting strategies. That does not prevent coping mechanisms. Those strategies only show you how to minimize the damage once your child has already ended up over here. It doesn't show you how to properly identify why your child ended up there. It just shows you how to minimize damage. That is all damage control. So if you want me to help you, I'm going to drop a link below this video where you can book a call with my team, and we'll walk you through how we do this, what the program looks like, and see if you are a good fit. So that said, this is my approach to parenting. This is the ideal approach to parenting. This is the gold standard. This is going to make your child the healthiest, happiest, and most engaged version of themselves possible. It's going to make your life 1,000 times easier. You're going to feel absolutely incredible knowing that you're providing the perfect conditions for your child. And you're not going to be scrambling to be perfect in every area. You're going to focus on the fundamentals. Because when you get the fundamentals right, like I said, you do not have to be perfect. You just have to focus on the highest leverage things that are at the core of whatever it is that you're striving to achieve. You get the fundamentals right and life becomes absolutely amazing. You don't have to stress out anymore. That said, if you want my help, I have a link below this video. You can schedule a call with my team, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Welcome to my channel. And if there's anything you guys want me to talk about, just go ahead and drop it in the comments below. If you guys want me to make specific videos on specific topics, if you guys want me to break down specific problems and show you what is behind the problems and what you need to do to solve them, if you guys are struggling with anything specific, feel free to drop it below in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.